My husband Paul, who is 36, shares 2 teenage kids with his ex-wife, Mary, 34. They have a 50-50 custody arrangement, meaning the kids split their time equally between both parents. There's no court-ordered child support, but Paul takes on most of the financial responsibilities. He pays for all their medical expenses, insurance, extracurricular activities, and even contributes $200 per month to a college fund for each child. I have a teenage daughter as well, so we juggle a lot financially. Paul used to have a stable base income and earned additional bonuses and commissions. Whenever he received a commission check, he'd voluntarily send Mary 60% of it. For bonuses, he would send her 40%. This wasn't something a court required, it was just something he regularly did to help out. However, things took a turn when Paul was in a car accident that left him unable to work for 6 months. He eventually lost his job and had to take legal action to get the compensation he deserved. It took him 4 months to find another job, but it came with a significant pay cut, no commissions, and no bonuses. Paul's new job also had to accommodate his disabilities, which further limited his earning potential. During this time, I stepped in and covered all the household bills, including Paul's child-related expenses. I even continued sending Mary the same amount of extra money Paul used to send her before his accident. It was tough, but I didn't want the kids to feel the financial strain. While all this was happening, my own daughter turned 17. She had been saving up for a car and managed to put away $5,000. I had promised to match whatever she saved, so we used the combined $7,000 to get her a car. She takes full responsibility for her car expenses, including insurance and gas. Shortly after, Paul's teen daughter saw the car and mentioned it to Mary. Apparently, this inspired Mary to lease a car for her, but she didn't discuss it with us first. A month later, Mary reached out, asking for extra money. She assumed we had figured things out financially after seeing us buy my daughter a car. We explained that wasn't the case and reminded her about Paul's reduced income and our current financial struggles. Unfortunately, Mary didn't take it well. She became furious, cursed at us, and eventually took us to court for child support. In court, the judge reviewed the situation and determined that Mary actually earns significantly more than Paul now. The court ruled that Mary should pay Paul $400 per month in child support and reimburse him for the insurance expenses he had been covering. The judge also took into account that Paul is now considered disabled, so his past income wasn't factored into the decision. Since the ruling, it's been 4 months, and Mary's entire family has been harassing us. They're calling us horrible and selfish, blaming us for Mary's financial struggles. They claim she's at risk of eviction and that Paul's daughter's car is about to be repossessed. They also say it's my fault because Mary only leased the car assuming we'd continue sending her extra money. Now, with the child support payments she has to make, she says she can't afford rent. Mary insists that I'm spoiling my daughter and playing favorites because I helped her buy a car while refusing to support Paul's kids the same way. She also argues that since the kids live with me half the time, my income should factor into their support. All of this has left me feeling awful and questioning myself. Am I the bad guy here? I could step in to help financially, but doing so would mean sacrificing my own ability to save for the future. I've been paying more of our household expenses because my husband, Paul, earns much less now after his accident. Despite this, I know I'm not in the wrong here. A spouse should not be held financially responsible for their partner's children. That's the responsibility of the biological parents, plain and simple. Mary, Paul's ex-wife, had no right to assume otherwise. Honestly, Paul was incredibly generous with Mary before his accident. He used to share a significant portion of his bonuses and commissions with her, even though it wasn't court-ordered. If I were in his position, I wouldn't have been so accommodating. Any extra income would have gone toward a savings account, the kids' college fund, or directly buying what they needed, like better equipment for sports or hobbies. Giving the extra money directly to Mary, without any strings attached, was more than fair. But that generosity came back to bite us. Mary made a huge mistake by taking us to court. She assumed she would win and that we'd be forced to keep paying her extra money, but her plan backfired. The court reviewed the situation and saw that Paul's financial circumstances had drastically changed. Since Mary makes significantly more money than Paul now, the court ordered her to pay him child support and reimburse him for certain expenses. She essentially dug her own grave by trying to squeeze more out of us when we were already struggling. To me, Mary's behavior comes across as entitled and greedy. We already share custody of the kids 50-50, which means she's not the sole caregiver. On top of that, she's lucky she ever saw a penny of Paul's commissions or bonuses to begin with. Many people wouldn't have been as generous as Paul was, especially when they weren't obligated to share extra income like that. The fact that Mary's family has now involved themselves makes this even messier. They've been harassing us, calling us names, and blaming us for Mary's financial problems. They claim she's at risk of eviction and that her leased car for Paul's daughter is about to be repossessed. They even say it's my fault for helping my own daughter get a car, accusing me of playing favorites. But let's be real, Mary's financial troubles are her responsibility, not mine. If her family is so concerned, maybe they should step up and help her out instead of blaming us. They certainly don't get a say in how we manage our household or our money. The irony of this whole situation is that Mary cursed us out, took us to court, and ended up being the one paying child support. That's karma for you. She wanted more money from us even though Paul makes less, and now she's learning the hard way that greed doesn't pay off. As for my guilt, I've decided to let it go. I shouldn't feel horrible for something that isn't my fault. Mary made her choices, and now she's dealing with the consequences. I've been fair and even generous, but I'm not going to jeopardize my own financial stability to clean up her mess. Mary needs to adjust her lifestyle to match her means, not expect others to support her. If Mary's family continues to harass us, I won't hesitate to block them. They don't live in our shoes and have no right to judge. It's not my fault that Mary, who earns more and has fewer people to support, can't manage her finances. She got greedy, and now she's paying the price. It all started when my friends and I were playing basketball outside during lunch. While we were having fun, we noticed a boy sitting alone on the grass, crying. We walked over to see if he was okay and asked what was wrong. He opened up to us and told us about being bullied. Some kids were targeting him for being different. They called him names, used slurs, and made fun of him for liking things like skincare routines, Starbucks iced coffee, and fashion. The way he described it, they mocked him for having what they considered a feminine style. We told him that we didn't care about any of that and thought he was cool. To lighten the mood, he started talking to us about skincare and fashion. While we didn't know much about those topics, we tried to keep the conversation going by bringing up brands like Nike and other sports-related fashion we were familiar with. Surprisingly, he knew a lot about it. He even mentioned that he had been taking college-level courses about fashion history, even though he's our age. We were impressed. As he opened up more, we asked if he wanted to join us for a game of basketball. He hesitated at first, saying he wasn't really into sports, but eventually joined in. To our surprise, he was amazing at it. He had natural talent, easily keeping up with us and even scoring a few times. It was impressive, especially since we were playing seriously. We encouraged him to consider trying out for the high school basketball team, and he said he might think about it. Over the next few weeks, we started hanging out with him more and got to know him better. He became part of our group. One day, while we were playing basketball at the park, his phone fell out of his pocket. One of my friends picked it up to hand it back to him, but at the same moment, a notification popped up from Instagram. My friend accidentally opened the message and saw something awful. Someone had sent him a hateful message full of cruel words. The boy noticed and immediately looked upset. When we saw the sender's name, my stomach dropped. It was my sister. I was shocked. I had no idea my sister had been one of the kids bullying him. When we asked him about it, he admitted that she and a group of other kids had been sending him hurtful messages for weeks. He showed us more messages, and they were worse than I expected. It wasn't just teasing, it was mean, targeted harassment. My friends and I told him that what they were doing wasn't okay and that we wanted to help. He agreed to let us report it to the school administration. The next day, we went to the assistant principal, AP, and told them everything, showing them the messages as proof. My sister, along with her friends, was called into the office. There were 4 of them in total, 2 girls, 1 boy, and my sister. One of the boys was her boyfriend. After the school investigated, it became clear that my sister had been the ringleader. She was the one who organized the group and encouraged the bullying. Because of this, she received the harshest punishment: expulsion. The others got lesser penalties, like suspension or detention, but my sister's actions were deemed the worst. When my parents found out, they were furious, not at my sister for bullying, but at me for reporting her. They said I should have come to them first instead of going to the school. They accused me of betraying my sister and making the situation worse. My sister was even angrier. She called me a snitch and said she hated me. She refused to take any responsibility for what she had done and acted like I was the one who had ruined her life. The only person in my family who supported me was my grandfather. He's 75 now, but back in his younger days, he was involved in activist groups. He told me about how he had seen his gay friends face terrible bullying when he was in school and how much it affected them. Even though the boy my sister bullied isn't gay, my grandfather said the situation was just as wrong. He was horrified by my sister's behavior and agreed that I had done the right thing. My friends have also been reassuring me that I made the right choice. They pointed out that my sister needed to face consequences for her actions. If no one had stepped in, she would have continued to bully others without thinking twice about the harm she was causing. Unfortunately, my parents are still coddling her. They seem more upset about the punishment she received than about the pain she caused someone else. Honestly, I think this might be a wake-up call for my sister, even if she doesn't realize it yet. She needs to learn how to treat people with kindness and respect. Right now, she's only angry because she got caught and punished. She doesn't seem to feel any guilt or regret for what she did to that boy. I don't feel like I betrayed her. I feel like I stood up for someone who needed help, and I don't regret it. If she had just been decent to others, none of this would have happened. I hope that one day she realizes that and becomes a better person. Until then, I'm going to focus on doing what's right, even if it's hard. Your sister got caught and is in trouble, but does she even feel sorry for the person she hurt? It doesn't sound like it. She's been acting this way for a long time, and nothing has changed. Your parents clearly didn't handle her behavior in the past, so why would telling them now have made a difference? You did the right thing, and you should feel proud of yourself. The world needs more people like you who stand up for what's right. Your sister got herself expelled. Her actions led to this, not you. Even if you hadn't reported her, things would have come out eventually. That boy would have spoken up, and your sister would still have faced the consequences. Your parents shielding her from punishment only makes her behavior worse in the long run. Also, a big shout out to you and your friends for including that boy in your group and making him feel welcome, even though his interests are different. Not everyone your age would take the time to do that. And your grandpa sounds like an incredible person. Someone who truly understands what it means to support and stand up for others. He's a great role model. I'm 23 years old and I have 4 older siblings. Watching my parents struggle financially and regret having kids made me decide early on that I didn't want children of my own. It's not that I don't love kids. I adore my nieces and nephews and love spoiling them. But I've never wanted to be a parent. I've worked hard to build my career, and I can't imagine giving it up for something that might bring years of regret. My husband feels the same way. He doesn't want kids either, though he loves spending time with our nieces and nephews. The problem is my mother-in-law. She has very old-fashioned views and believes a man should work while the woman stays home to raise kids. She has no respect for me because I've decided not to have children. Every time I see her, she makes comments like, "At your age, I already had kids," or, "What are you even doing with your life if you're not having children?" It's frustrating, but my husband tells me to ignore her since we only see her at family events. Now, here's where things get even messier. My father-in-law never wanted kids, but my mother-in-law tricked him into having them. When my husband was 12, they divorced. She was heartbroken and has stayed in love with him ever since. The other day, we went to a small family gathering. Everything was going fine, and I was having fun. At one point, I picked up my husband's little cousin and started playing with her. My mother-in-law saw this and came over to me. She said, "See? Isn't that easy? Now you just have to have your own kids and do this. What else could you possibly be doing with your life? Stop slacking off." In that moment, her comment really got to me. It was so disrespectful and dismissive of the choices I've made for my own life. When my mother-in-law made yet another comment about me not wanting kids, I replied, "Oh, I don't want kids. Kind of like your ex-husband. Who knows, maybe my marriage will work out better than yours because I'm not too selfish to consider other people's feelings." She stood there, completely shocked, before bursting into tears. Everyone at the family gathering rushed over to see what was going on. When she told them what I said, some people laughed while others looked upset. I felt terrible and wished I hadn't said it. My husband dragged me to the car afterward. On the way home, he said that while his mom deserved it for constantly poking at me, I could have chosen my words better instead of going straight for the jugular. Since then, I've received a few messages from family members saying the same thing, but most of them are just calling me a horrible person. Honestly, no. What you said might have been harsh, but it had been building up for a long time. Your mother-in-law has been pushing and belittling you, and she wasn't expecting you to clap back. She's used to getting away with it. If your husband had addressed her behavior earlier and set boundaries, maybe it wouldn't have escalated to this point. Sometimes, ignoring people like her is the easy way out, but it doesn't actually fix the problem. Setting boundaries isn't easy, especially with someone who's manipulative or overbearing, but it's necessary. Your reaction was intense, sure, but it's likely because you've endured a lot of small jabs over time. It's like being poked 1,000 times. Eventually, you snap. She wasn't ready for you to stand up for yourself, which is why she reacted so strongly. Her hurt feelings are just more visible now, while yours have been building up for years. You might feel bad about it, but don't let her guilt trip you into thinking you're entirely in the wrong. I'm an 18-year-old college freshman, and I'm part of a student committee that helps incoming students adjust to life at our school. My role focuses on low-income students, which the school defines as anyone receiving 99% financial aid. We reach out to these students before they arrive and let them know about programs and resources available to help them. I recently met with an incoming student, a 17-year-old guy, whose family income is about $75,000 a year. At our school, the cutoff for full financial aid is $80,000, so he qualifies for 99% aid. For context, most students whose families make up to $280,000 get some form of partial aid, but he falls into the lowest 25% of students here economically. As someone in the same situation, on full financial aid, I understand how much programs like these can help. Our goal is to make sure students like him feel supported and have the resources they need to succeed. I was supposed to ask if the student wanted to join special programs for low-income students. These programs include tutoring, social groups, and other resources designed to help kids who might struggle more with grades or fitting in when they start school. Our school offers a lot of support for students from disadvantaged backgrounds because they often face extra challenges. When I brought this up to the student, he got really upset. He started saying he wasn't low income or disadvantaged and that his parents had good jobs. He was clearly offended, and I didn't know what to say since I wasn't trained for situations like this. It felt really awkward, so I just said, "Well, your profile says you're eligible for these programs." That only made him angrier, and the meeting ended with him still upset. It felt like the opposite of what I was trying to achieve. You're not the bad guy here, you were just doing your job with the information you were given. That said, I understand why the student felt offended. The way schools label these programs can sometimes come across as judgmental. Nobody wants to feel like they're being called poor or disadvantaged. Your school could definitely work on how these things are communicated. This situation is a tough learning experience for you. In the future, you might approach it by focusing more on the benefits of the programs rather than the label. Something like, "We offer some great resources for students who qualify for financial aid. Would you like to learn more?" could be less likely to offend. Also, the assumption that students from low-income households automatically struggle more can feel like stereotyping. While statistics may show trends, individual experiences vary. Plenty of kids from lower-income families excel in school without extra help. It's always important to approach these conversations with sensitivity, and your school could definitely provide better training for situations like this. I'm 23 and live with my roommate, who's 25. We're good friends but not super close. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, her mom passed away unexpectedly. She was devastated and flew home for a few days to be with her family. Since coming back, she's mostly stayed at our apartment. She's asked for fewer shifts at work, so now she only works a few hours 5 days a week. Before, she worked full-time. When she's not working, she spends most of her time in bed or talking to her dad on the phone. It's clear she's still grieving, and I feel terrible for her. I've been taking on almost all of the household chores since my roommate's mom passed away. I've been cooking her meals, cleaning the entire house, and even offered to clean her bathroom. We don't share one. She accepted my offer, and I've been doing that too. Earlier this week, while she was sitting on the couch reading a book, I asked her for her rent money so I could pay the landlord. She looked at me and said, "You expect me to pay rent after my mom just died? That's so mean." Then she added that she hasn't been working much, so she can't afford to pay her share anyway. I understand that she's grieving, and I don't blame her for working less. She's going through a really hard time. But I'm a grad student, and I don't have a lot of money either. I technically could pay the full rent this month, but I'd have to dip into my small savings account, which I really don't want to do. I'm also worried about setting a bad example. If I pay her share now, she might start expecting me to cover all the rent and utilities going forward. Our rent was originally due on the 1st, but I explained the situation to our landlord, and he gave us a 3-week extension. Now it's due on the 15th. I've been pushing back and telling my roommate that she still needs to pay her part, but she keeps insisting that I cover it because she's grieving. She called me selfish and said I was being mean. One of our mutual friends even told me I should just suck it up and pay her share. Am I wrong for refusing to pay her rent? You're not in the wrong here. You've already gone above and beyond to support her emotionally and physically by doing extra chores, cooking, and cleaning. But rent is her responsibility, and grief doesn't mean she gets to skip out on it. As long as she's living there, she needs to contribute to the bills. It's also unfair to expect you to drain your savings to cover for her. You don't have extra money just because her situation changed. If she believes she shouldn't have to pay rent because of her loss, she should explain that directly to the landlord, not make it your problem. Of course, she won't do that because she knows it's unreasonable. Don't let anyone guilt you into thinking you're wrong here. You've already been incredibly kind and supportive. She needs to figure out a way to pitch in, whether that means asking family for help or working a few extra hours. Your savings should be your last resort, and even then, it shouldn't be offered as a solution for her. If the living arrangement continues like this, you might need that money for yourself. Stand firm on this. It's okay to be empathetic, but it's also okay to have boundaries.